Millionaire hears our mom is sick from 6-year-old Triplets. What he did next shocked everyone. That's the title of today's story. And yes, it all started with one sentence whispered through chattering teeth on a cold Charleston morning. Help us, sir. Our mom is sick. If you've ever wondered what happens when a complete stranger steps into a child's world at just the right moment, this story might stay with you long after it ends. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional, real-life inspired stories like this one, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below, maybe just your city or what part of the story speaks to you most. Now, let's begin. It was just past 7:30 a.m. when Henry Langston, retired software magnate worth over $200 million, stepped outside for his usual morning walk along the quiet side streets of downtown Charleston. His days were calm routine, polished like the cufflinks he still wore out of habit. At 62, his world was neat, predictable, and painfully empty. Until he heard it, a soft voice almost lost in the rustle of wind and passing cars. Toys for sale. Please help. He looked up and stopped walking. 3 small girls, no taller than his waist, stood huddled on the corner of East Bay and Trad. Identical curls poked out from under 2 thin hats. A cardboard box sat between them, filled with scuffed dolls and plastic dinosaurs. A hand-drawn sign said, $2 each. Our mom is sick. They weren't crying. They weren't begging. They were trying to fix something with the only tools children have: love and whatever they could carry. Henry had faced billion-dollar decisions, but this one moment, this quiet sidewalk, froze him in place. He took a breath and stepped forward. Maya Bell's room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the monitor and the gentle whoosh of warm air through an aging ceiling vent. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above, casting a bluish glow that didn't quite reach the corners. The window beside her bed framed the winter-gray morning branches, bare and unmoving, like everything inside had come to a slow, suspended hush. When the door creaked open, Maya stirred. She blinked slowly, registering the shapes: 3 little ones rushing in, followed by a tall, older man with kind, confused eyes. Lily reached the bed first and whispered something Maya couldn't catch. Nora climbed carefully onto the chair beside her mother. Ivy hesitated, then took a seat on the foot of the bed, resting her tiny hand over Maya's blanketed foot. Maya pushed herself up slightly, her movements slow, like every inch of effort took negotiation with her body. The man stepped forward and gave a respectful nod. Ma'am, I'm sorry to intrude. My name's Henry Langston. I met your girls this morning. His voice was gentle, deliberate, but he seemed unsure of himself, like someone navigating unfamiliar ground. They said you were unwell. Maya's lips tugged into a tired smile that didn't quite meet her eyes. I'm guessing they sold you their last toys. They offered, Henry said. I bought the whole box. This made Maya's smile widen just for a second. They're resourceful. I told them to stay with Mrs. Monroe next door. They said she was asleep, Lily added softly. And you needed money for medicine. I did, Maya said, her voice catching for a moment. I do, but I didn't want them out in the cold. Henry looked at her carefully. Her skin had the pale translucency of someone who'd spent too many nights in a hospital bed. A patterned headscarf covered her hair, what was left of it. There were IV tubes running quietly into her arm. She was clearly exhausted, but when she turned her head to look at her girls, there was nothing but fierce love in her eyes. They shouldn't have to do this, she said quietly. But I didn't know what else to do. I'm trying to protect them and keep them from feeling how bad it really is. But they know. Henry didn't respond right away. He felt like he was witnessing something sacred, something heavy and private that he wasn't quite sure he had the right to stand in front of. They didn't seem scared, he finally said, just determined. That's the scariest part, Maya murmured. They're only 6. They shouldn't have to be strong. Nora reached for her mother's hand and squeezed it. We're not scared, Mommy. We just want you to get better. Ivy leaned her small body against Maya's leg. We can sell more things if we have to. Maya's eyes welled up. She blinked quickly and smiled again, though her voice cracked this time. No, baby. That's not your job. It's mine. Henry stepped closer, gently placing a hand on the back of the chair where Nora sat. Maya, can I call you that? She nodded slowly. I know this is sudden, and I won't pretend to understand everything that's happened, but would you mind telling me what you're facing? He asked. Maybe I can help, not just as someone who met your daughters, but as someone who's been on the outside of things and knows what that feels like. Maya studied him for a long moment. Henry didn't shift under her gaze, though a quiet unease flickered in his chest. You're the tech guy, aren't you? She finally asked. Langston Technologies. My neighbor used to talk about you. He gave a sheepish nod. That was another life, I think. And now I'm retired. I walk a lot, read, miss people I haven't talked to in a long time. And sometimes I stop on the street when I see 3 little girls selling their toys in winter. Maya let out a soft, dry laugh. Fair enough. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that wrapped around the room like a blanket shared by people who didn't need to fill every second with sound. I have stage 2 lymphoma, Maya said, suddenly, eyes still on the window. Aggressive, but treatable. The treatment's just not covered fully by my insurance. There's a new drug they want to try, and it costs more than I made last year teaching full-time. Henry winced. And you're going through it alone. Maya nodded slowly. The girl's father left when I got diagnosed, said he couldn't handle it. Disappeared. Henry clenched his jaw, but said nothing. I've applied for every program I could find. She went on voice quieter now, but the wait lists are long, and time isn't something I can afford to waste. The hospital helps where it can, but they're overburdened, so I come in when I can rest, when they let me, and pray Mrs. Monroe can keep an eye on the girls when I can't. Henry looked at the triplets now curled up like kittens around their mother. Their trust was absolute, their resilience astonishing, and entirely unfair. Would it be all right, he said slowly, if I helped cover the cost of that treatment? Maya blinked. You mean a donation? No, I mean, whatever it costs. Call it whatever you want. But I have the means, and honestly, I'd like to use them for something that matters. She shook her head gently. Mr. Langston, I can't let a stranger do that. I don't even know you. I don't want anything from you, Maya. Just the chance to help. Maya looked like she wanted to argue, but her shoulders sagged, the fight slowly leaking out of her as exhaustion took over. I'm not a charity case, I know, he said softly. You're a mother, and a very brave one. That's why I want to help. She stared at him, then glanced down at her daughters. They already like you, she whispered. I like them too, he said, smiling. They remind me of something I lost, a long time ago. There was a pause before Maya finally whispered, Okay. Henry didn't smile. He didn't try to act heroic. He just nodded and quietly took out a small notepad from his coat pocket. What's the name of the medication? Revitanex, she said. It's $4,800 per cycle. Henry nodded again and wrote down the name. Then he carefully tore out the page and tucked it into his wallet. The girls looked at him like he had pulled a magic trick. Henry gave them a small wink. I'll be back tomorrow, he said. I've got a few errands to run, and maybe I'll bring something warm to drink. Ivy perked up, hot cocoa with marshmallows. Henry chuckled. Deal. As he stood and moved toward the door, Maya called out softly. Mr. Langston. He turned. I mean it. Thank you. Not just for the money, but for not walking away. Henry met her eyes. Sometimes he said you're not supposed to. He stepped into the hallway, the door gently clicking behind him. His breath felt tight in his chest, not from the cold, but from the unfamiliar weight in his heart. He'd been many things in his life, visionary CEO lone wolf, but never someone that 3 children ran to. Never someone who could walk into a hospital room and be trusted on sight. Until now. And somehow, that scared him more than anything else ever had. The wind rattled faintly against the tall windows as Henry Langston unlocked the front door of his riverfront home. The brass handle, polished like everything else in his life, clicked into place with a quiet finality. Behind him, 3 pairs of snow-dusted sneakers shuffled on the welcome mat. Go on, he said softly, nudging the door open with his shoulder. Come in. The triplets hesitated. Lily peeked in first, her eyes scanning the long hallway that stretched into the heart of the house. It was beautiful, immaculate. Warm light glowed from recessed bulbs above. Cream walls, soft rugs, tall windows framed with white linen drapes. But there were no toys, no jackets hanging by the door, no fingerprints on the glass. "This place is huge," whispered Nora, stepping in behind her sister. "It smells like lemon soap," said Ivy, her nose wrinkling. "And old books." Henry chuckled faintly. "That's about right." The girls wandered in their footsteps, barely making a sound, on the polished wooden floors. The house was silent in a way that didn't feel peaceful, just paused, like it had been waiting a long time for something to happen again. "Is this where you live?" Lily asked. Every day, Henry nodded gently, setting their coats on the hallway bench. The girls stood in the foyer staring at the grand staircase that curved up to the second floor. To the right was a sunken living room with a fireplace framed in gray stone. To the left, an open dining area with tall-backed chairs that looked too elegant to sit in. And across from them, the long hallway led to a kitchen that smelled faintly of fresh bread. "We don't have to stay," said Nora suddenly. "We can go back to Mrs. Monroe's if it's too much." Henry turned and studied her face, brave but uncertain. "You're not intruding," he said gently. "I invited you. And honestly, I could use the company." The words surprised even him as they left his mouth. He'd lived alone for nearly 8 years. The silence had become part of his daily rhythm. But right now, the thought of being alone again after seeing Maya's eyes and the girl's quiet resilience felt unbearable. "Can we take off our shoes?" Ivy asked, already untying hers. "Please do." "But socks stay on," he added with a mock-serious tone. Cold floors. The girls giggled and shed their shoes, then wandered further in, exploring carefully, respectfully, like they knew they were inside someone else's story. They passed the fireplace and into the living room. Nora looked up at the shelves. "Where are your pictures?" "Pictures." Henry blinked. "Like, of your family. Us and Mommy have pictures everywhere," Lily said, "even in the bathroom." Ivy nodded, "Even on the fridge, and some of them are crooked. But Mommy said that's okay because they make the house feel loved." Henry paused. He looked around. The walls were decorated with landscape paintings, cool abstract ones in muted colors. The shelves were lined with books, antique clocks, carved wooden figurines. But no photos. Not one. "I used to have some," he said slowly. "Where are they?" Nora asked. "Upstairs, in the attic. I packed them away a long time ago." "Why?" Lily asked. Henry's throat tightened. He turned toward the kitchen. "Are you girls hungry?" They were. He knew they were. He could tell by how quiet they got. "I can make grilled cheese and soup." "We can help," said Ivy, quickly hopping behind the counter. Henry smiled. "Deal. But only if you promise not to burn down my kitchen." He found his old apron, once white, now faded oatmeal, and tossed it over his shirt. The girls stood on stools offering ingredients, giggling as he tried to explain how his toaster worked. It was the first time in years the kitchen had held more than the clink of a fork or the beep of a microwave. After dinner, they gathered in the living room, bellies full of tomato soup and sandwiches. Henry turned on the fireplace and dimmed the lights. The room flickered warmly, but the space still felt too adult, too stiff. He saw Lily eyeing the thick armchair like she wasn't sure if she'd get in trouble for sitting on it. "You can sit anywhere," he said. They clambered onto the couch together, squeezing in like a line of ducklings. Ivy glanced at the mantel and asked again, "Mr. Henry, why did you put your pictures away?" He paused. The fire popped softly beside them. "My daughter's name is Charlotte," he said slowly. "She's 27 now, lives in Europe. I haven't seen her in a long time." "Why not?" Lily asked. "She was little when my wife got sick. I tried to take care of everything. I worked all the time. I thought money would fix it, but I missed a lot. Too much." The girls listened without interrupting, their little faces open and soft, their eyes unusually still for 6-year-olds. "When Charlotte was older," he continued, "she told me I was never really there, that even when I was, I wasn't. She left after college, and we haven't spoken since." "That's really sad," Nora whispered. He nodded. "It is." "But you're not like that now," Ivy said. Henry smiled. No. You were there today, said Lily. You didn't just walk by. That single sentence slipped into his chest and filled something that had been empty for too long. Later, as the clock crept toward 9, Henry carried warm, folded blankets into the guest room. He had rushed to have the linens changed earlier in the day. Mrs. Monroe, as kind and practical as ever, had helped him prep the twin beds. But when he returned 20 minutes later to check on them, he found all 3 girls curled up like a pile of kittens on the couch. One was halfway off a cushion. Another was clinging to a plush throw pillow like a life preserver. He stood there for a moment, not sure whether to laugh or cry. And in the end, he just walked over, gently lifted Nora, then Lily, then Ivy, tucking them into the guest beds one by one. As he reached the door, Ivy blinked up at him sleepily. Are we staying here again tomorrow, if you want to? He said. I do. He nodded. Then yes. She closed her eyes and murmured, I like your house. It's quiet, but not in a sad way now. He turned off the lamp and closed the door. Upstairs, he wandered through the hallway toward his own bedroom, but something made him stop. He stared at the pull-down ladder that led to the attic. He hadn't touched it in nearly 5 years. His hand reached up on instinct. Moments later, he was standing in the dust-smelling attic, surrounded by boxes with labels like Charlotte, age 5, and Rachel, summer 2006. The air felt heavier up there, not from dust, but from time. He knelt by the nearest box and opened it. There, under tissue paper, lay a photo frame. Inside, a laughing child with wild curls and a pink jumper leaned against a woman with soft eyes. Both were laughing. Henry himself was in the background, caught mid-smile, blurry but real. He held it in his hands a long time. Then he brought it downstairs. In the morning before the girls woke up, Henry placed the photo gently on the living room shelf, right where the firelight would catch it. And when Lily tiptoed in hours later, rubbing her eyes and asking for cocoa, she stopped in her tracks. You found it, she whispered. I did, Henry said. It looks nice there, she said. It does. The sound of little feet running down the hallway broke the quiet. Can we have pancakes? Nora asked. With chocolate chips, Ivy chimed in. Henry grinned and headed for the kitchen. Absolutely, but you're helping. Yay! As the girls gathered around the counter, laughing and arguing over who got to crack the eggs, Henry stood behind them, spatula in hand, smile on his face. His house no longer felt paused. It had started again. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen's tall windows, landing in long gold stripes across the tile floor. A faint smell of syrup and butter still lingered in the air. The breakfast mess, flour dust, sticky plates, half-sliced bananas, was a glorious sign of a life re-entering the house. Henry Langston stood at the sink, rinsing pancake batter off a bowl. He was wearing his second cleanest flannel shirt sleeves, rolled, and for the first time in years, his house wasn't quiet. It was full of humming. 3 little girls dressed in mismatched pajamas were gathered at the small breakfast table. Ivy was drawing on the back of a napkin. Nora was braiding Lily's curls. Someone had left a trail of stickers across the counter. Mr. Henry Lilly called out between bites of toast. Why do you drink that brown stuff at night? Henry blinked, caught off guard. What brown stuff? The one in the glass with the ice, Ivy said, tilting her head. It smells like Daddy's sad drink. He froze for just a beat. The girls looked up, their expressions curious, not accusing. Henry set the bowl on the drying rack and turned to face them, drying his hands on a towel. Whiskey, he said after a moment. It's called whiskey. Why do you drink it? Nora asked gently. Does it make you feel better? Henry hesitated. I thought it did, but maybe it doesn't. The girls seemed to take that answer in without judgment. Their eyes, though young, had a depth that made Henry feel like he was being watched from a place of quiet understanding. Daddy drank that too, Ivy said, but it made him yell. And leave, Lily added, when Mommy lost her hair. Henry moved slowly to the table and pulled up a chair. Would it be okay, he asked, if I told you something about me? They nodded solemnly like 3 tiny counselors with sticky fingers and wide eyes. I used to drink that stuff every night, he said. Sometimes 2 glasses, sometimes more. I thought it helped me sleep. I thought it helped me stop missing people. Who did you miss? Nora asked. My daughter. Her name's Charlotte. And her mom, Rachel. Did they leave, too? Ivy whispered. Henry looked down at the grain of the wooden table. Rachel died a long time ago, and Charlotte left after that. Not because she didn't love me, but because I stopped being a real dad. I was there, but I wasn't really there, you know. The girls nodded. Sometimes we're quiet at home, Lily said. But Mommy says it's okay to be sad. That's a smart thing to say. Do you still miss them? Nora asked. Every day, he said softly. But it doesn't feel quite the same now. Because of us, Ivy asked a little shyly. Henry's throat tightened. He reached out and gently brushed a curl from her forehead. Yes, he said, because of you. There was a silence, not heavy, just full. Then Nora said, we can be your pretend daughters. Lily quickly added, or real ones. If you want. Henry didn't speak right away. He just smiled quiet and small and blinked quickly. I'd like that, he said. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of warm things. Socks drying near the vent, a soft cartoon playing on the living room TV, crayons scattered across the coffee table. Henry had never seen his house this lived in. He didn't even mind the grape juice stains on the rug. That afternoon, while the girls napped in a bundle on the couch, he tiptoed upstairs and opened the box labeled Charlotte's letters. He read through a few notes she had written as a child full of drawings and misspellings. One in particular stopped him cold. Dear Daddy, I miss when you made funny voices and read bedtime stories. I know you're busy, but I wish you'd be home when I'm asleep so I don't have to pretend someone's there. I'm not mad. I'm just lonely. Henry folded the letter carefully, as though it were something sacred, and put it in his shirt pocket. When the girls woke up, they found him in the kitchen, boiling pasta. You cook a lot, Lily said, rubbing her eyes. I've had help, he said, smiling. That night after dinner, in an extra-long bath full of bubbles and shrieks, the girls sat in the living room in their soft pajamas. Can we ask you something serious? Ivy said, holding a fuzzy giraffe by the leg. Henry sat beside them. Of course. If Mommy doesn't get better, Lily said slowly, do we have to go with Daddy again? Henry felt the air shift. The words weren't shouted or panicked. They were calm, measured, full of 6-year-old gravity. You won't go anywhere you don't want to go, he said. Not if I have anything to say about it. But what if the judge says so? Nora asked. Like on TV. Henry leaned forward. I'll fight for you, I promise. But more importantly, your mom is doing better. She told me so herself. She's smiling more now, Ivy said, even when she's tired. Do you miss your mommy a lot when you're here? He asked. They nodded. But we like being here too, Lily said quickly. It's warm. And safe, added Nora. And there's pancakes, said Ivy. Henry laughed, but it was quiet. Then Ivy looked at him and asked, Are we your family now? He didn't rush the answer. I don't know all the rules, he said finally. But in my heart, yes, you are. The triplets huddled closer, resting their heads on his arms and shoulders, their little hands tucked under his. Henry stayed there long after they had fallen asleep. He thought of Rachel. He thought of Charlotte. He thought of Maya fighting for breath in a clinic bed, but still worrying more about her daughters than herself. And then he thought about the whiskey. Without saying a word, he stood careful not to wake the girls and walked into the kitchen. He opened the cabinet above the fridge. There it was, the old bottle, a little dusty, but still half full. He stared at it a long time. Then he took it down, unscrewed the cap, and dumped the contents into the sink. The scent rose up sharp, smoky, familiar, but it didn't make him flinch. It just made him realize he didn't need it anymore. Not with 3 little girls sleeping in his living room. Not with pancakes on the stove and drawings taped to the fridge. Not with the quiet hope that maybe there was still time to get this one right. The sun had begun its slow descent over the Charleston skyline, casting long golden stripes across the white walls of Maya's hospital room. Outside, tree branches swayed gently in the breeze. Inside, everything was still. The girls had just left after their daily visit, their chatter still echoing faintly in Maya's heart. Henry had stayed behind, quietly helping her adjust her pillows and tidying the trays left behind by the nurses. Maya watched him with a mix of gratitude and quiet disbelief. She still couldn't quite wrap her mind around what had happened over the past few days. The girls were safe, the treatment had started, and she wasn't alone. But today, something was different in her eyes. "You're quiet," Henry said, gently placing a folded blanket at the foot of her bed. More than usual. Maya hesitated, then turned her head slowly toward him. He came back. Henry froze. "Who?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Malik," she whispered. "Last night, around 10. I was asleep, but one of the nurses woke me. He was outside the clinic asking for me by name." Henry's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Maya swallowed, her fingers curling slightly around the bedsheet. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He just stood there. He looked tired, old, not in his body, just his eyes. And what did he want? She looked down. The girls. Henry stepped closer, his voice still calm. He said that Maya nodded. He said he heard some rich guy was stepping in to take care of his daughters, that he wanted them back. Henry didn't speak. His mind was already racing. Malik had been gone for over a year. No calls, no help, no birthday cards, just silence. And now that things were improving, now that help had finally arrived, he had the nerve to come back. He asked to see them, Maya added. I said no. Good, Henry said firmly. That was the right call. I don't know if it was, Maya whispered. He's still their father, Henry. He turned to her, frustration simmering just under the surface. Maya, I know you're trying to be fair, but he walked out on you. He walked out on them. I know, she said. Believe me, I know. But what if he's trying to make it right? What if just maybe this scared him enough to want to change? Henry shook his head, then sat down beside her. Even if that's true, it doesn't undo what he did, or didn't do. I'm not saying he should just be welcomed back, Maya said carefully. I'm saying I want to do what's right for the girls. They're scared of him, Henry said quietly. They told me. They remember how he yelled, how he drank. They remember him saying he couldn't look at you anymore. Maya looked away ashamed. They weren't supposed to hear that. They did. Silence settled between them like a heavy blanket. Then she said, if this were reversed, if it were you who had walked away and Charlotte's mother had raised her alone, wouldn't you want a chance to come back? Henry didn't answer, because the truth was he had walked away. Not physically, but emotionally. He had buried himself in work and grief until Charlotte had no choice but to leave. And now she was a ghost in his life, only remembered in folded letters and dusty photographs. I'm not saying he should take them, Maya whispered. I'm just saying, if he really wants to see them, I don't want to be the reason they never get to ask the questions they'll need answered someday. Henry finally nodded slowly. We'll do it right. If he really wants to see them, we do it on our terms, not his. That afternoon, after Henry returned home, he found the triplets sprawled out across the living room floor, drawing with every marker they could find. Crayon shavings dusted the rug like confetti. Uncle Henry Ivy called out, running up to him and grabbing his hand. We made pictures of Mommy Want to See Mine, Lily asked, already holding hers up. I gave her her hair back. Henry knelt down, taking the picture from her hands. Maya stood, smiling, her yellow headscarf replaced with a crown of curls, drawn in a rainbow of colors. It's beautiful, he said softly. Can we show her tomorrow? Nora asked. Of course. He sat down on the floor with them, right in the middle of their art explosion. Girls, he said after a while, can I talk to you about something? The triplets turned toward him, expressions curious. It's about your dad. Their bodies stiffened just slightly. Not fearful, just wary. I saw your mommy today. She told me he came by the hospital. He wants to take us away, doesn't he? Ivy asked, her voice trembling. Henry took her hand. He asked to see you. That's all for now. The girls looked at one another silently, communicating in that wordless language siblings shared. We don't want to go, Lily said firmly. He didn't want us before. People can change, Henry said gently. But no one's going to make you do anything you don't want to do. I promise you that. Nora leaned against his shoulder. Will Mommy be there? Yes. And I'll be there too. Ivy whispered. Can we ask him why he left? Henry nodded. You can ask him anything you want. The next day, at a quiet corner of the clinic's garden courtyard, the meeting took place. Maya sat bundled on a bench, the girls at her side. Henry stood a few feet away, arms folded, gaze steady. He hadn't shaved. It felt right not to. Malik arrived late. He looked thinner, paler. His clothes hung loose and his shoes were scuffed. His eyes darted around nervously, then locked on the girls. "Hey," he said, his voice soft and uncertain. They didn't respond. He approached slowly, hands outstretched. "It's me, Daddy." Lily blinked. "We know." Malik knelt down, his voice catching. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to help. I didn't know what to do. Everything just felt too big. I messed up." "You left," Ivy said. "Mommy was sick and you left." "I know," he said, tears filling his eyes. "I was scared." "That's not an excuse. It's just the truth." "We're scared, too," Nora whispered. "But we stayed." Malik broke. He crumbled to the ground and cried, not the loud wailing cry of guilt, but the quiet, crumpled sorrow of someone who had finally run out of lies. Henry stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. She nodded. The girls stood, walked toward their father, and sat beside him, not to forgive or to forget, but to look him in the eye. "Are you going to be better now?" Lily asked. "I want to be," Malik said. "I don't know how yet, but I want to try." They were quiet for a long moment. Then Ivy said, "We live with Uncle Henry now." Malik looked up, startled. "Mommy's still sick sometimes," Nora added, "and we like it there." "I'm not trying to take you away," Malik said quickly. I want to be part of your life again." Lily looked over at Henry. "Can he visit sometimes?" Henry nodded, though his jaw remained tight. "If your mom agrees, and it's what you want, yes." Maya watched the whole thing from the bench, a quiet mix of heartbreak and hope in her chest. Later that evening, as the girls colored at the kitchen table, Henry stepped out onto the back porch where Maya was sitting in a rocking chair, wrapped in a shawl. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I think so." "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. She smiled. "I'm a mom. I've had practice." They sat together in silence for a while. "You think he'll change?" she asked. Henry thought for a long moment. "I think he might want to, but wanting isn't always enough." She nodded. "I guess we'll see." The porch lights flickered on. Inside, three little voices rose in laughter, arguing over who got the last cookie. And for now, that was enough. The courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and worn paper, with beams of sunlight slanting through high windows onto rows of solemn benches. It wasn't a big courtroom, not the kind you see in movies, just a modest family court in downtown Charleston, quiet, efficient, and designed more for practicality than drama. But to Henry Langston, it might as well have been a battlefield. He sat on the left side with Maya beside him, her scarf a soft shade of blue today, matching the faded ink of the hospital bracelet still clinging to her wrist. She looked tired, pale thin, but composed. Her hands rested on her lap, one clasped gently over the other to keep them from shaking. Claire Foster. The family services advocate sat just ahead, organizing her notes. Across the room, Malik Bell adjusted the collar of his button-down shirt for the 5th time. He looked cleaner than he had when he showed up at the clinic, but there was still something uneasy in the way he sat, his knee bouncing, his fingers twitching. Beside him sat a lean man in a cheap gray suit, clearly a public defender, stretched thin on time and patience. His eyes barely flicked up from his clipboard. The triplets sat outside, with a court-appointed child liaison waiting in the hall until they were called. Henry could hear their muffled voices even through the thick oak doors. It broke his heart and settled his focus all at once. Judge Olivia Bennett entered promptly at 9:00 a.m., a small, sharply observant woman in her 60s. Her presence quieted the room instantly. She didn't smile as she took her seat, but there was something calm and even about her demeanor, like a teacher who didn't need to raise her voice to command a room. "This is a temporary custody hearing for the care of minors Lily Nora and Ivy Bell." She began reading clearly from the docket. "Biological parents Maya Bell and Malik Bell are present. Mr. Henry Langston is currently acting as a guardian with the mother's verbal consent. We'll proceed with opening statements." Claire rose, her tone measured and respectful. "Your Honor, this case concerns the well-being of 3 young girls who have been under the daily care of Mr. Langston while their mother undergoes aggressive cancer treatment. The father, Mr. Bell, was absent for over a year and has only recently returned, citing intentions to reestablish custody. We ask the court to consider the children's expressed wishes, their stability, and the timeline of Mr. Bell's absence. Judge Bennett gave a small nod, then turned to Malik's lawyer. The man stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, my client acknowledges past mistakes, but is ready to resume his responsibilities as a father. He was not notified of the severity of Ms. Bell's illness and intends to provide a safe environment for his children. Has your client maintained steady employment? The judge asked. He is actively seeking employment, the lawyer replied. Has he provided any support in the last 12 months? The lawyer hesitated. No, Your Honor. The judge nodded again, making a note. Claire stood. Your Honor, we'd also like to request that the minors be allowed to speak with you privately in chambers. Henry felt his chest tighten. He hadn't wanted the girls to be dragged into this, but Claire had explained gently that it could make all the difference. A judge could interpret a parent's failure many ways, but the testimony of a child, especially 3, told its own truth. Judge Bennett considered. Do the minors wish to speak? They do, Claire said. The judge gestured to the bailiff. Bring them in, please. Moments later, the heavy doors opened and 3 small figures stepped into the courtroom. They were dressed carefully, skirts and sweaters, hair-combed shoes polished. They looked around the room like it was a museum they'd been told not to touch. Nora spotted Henry first and gave the faintest smile. Ivy waved shyly at her mother. Lily's eyes locked briefly with her father's before darting away. The judge softened slightly. Good morning, girls. Good morning, Your Honor, they chorused in near-perfect unison. Claire stepped forward. With your permission, they'll speak with you in your chambers privately. Granted. Henry stood as the girls walked by him, brushing their fingers over his hand as they passed. Just a small gesture of grounding, a reminder of trust. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Malik fiddled with his tie. Maya stared ahead, unblinking. Henry held the edge of the bench with both hands, trying not to imagine the questions being asked or the weight his girls must be feeling. Finally, the door opened again. The judge re-entered. The girls were escorted back to the hallway. Claire followed, face calm but unreadable. Judge Bennett adjusted her glasses and looked around the room. The children have spoken clearly and maturely for their age, she said. They've expressed strong emotional bonds with both their mother and Mr. Langston. They also expressed concerns about Mr. Bell's previous behavior and the emotional impact of his absence. Malik's shoulders visibly slumped. Judge Bennett continued. While I recognize a biological parent's rights, I also recognize that those rights are earned, not just inherited. Mr. Bell, you've taken a step by showing up, but parenting requires more than presence. Malik looked like he wanted to say something, but he stayed silent. As such, temporary custody will remain with Ms. Bell, with Mr. Langston acting as co-guardian with full authority for day-to-day decisions. Supervised visitation with Mr. Bell will be arranged weekly under court guidelines. We will review the case again in 90 days, pending evaluation of Mr. Bell's engagement and progress. A gavel strike, firm, final, clear. Henry exhaled slow and steady. The hearing was over. Outside in the hallway, the girls were waiting. When they saw Henry, they ran to him all at once, burying their heads in his sides, holding tight around his legs. Ivy clung to his coat. Lily looked up with wide eyes. Did we do okay? She asked. You were perfect, he said. All 3 of you. Maya came out next, arms wide, pulling her girls in close. Malik lingered near the edge of the hallway, watching quietly. After a moment, he stepped forward. Thank you, he said to Maya, for letting me speak to them. Maya didn't reply, but she didn't turn away. He looked to Henry next. They're lucky to have you. Henry gave a small nod. They deserve someone who shows up, even when it's hard. Malik dropped his gaze. I'll try. I don't know if I'll get it all right, but I'll try. Good, Henry said, because that's what they'll remember. Later that afternoon, back at the house, the girls changed out of their court clothes and into mismatched pajamas. They built a pillow fort in the living room, filling it with stuffed animals and flashlights. Henry stood in the kitchen making popcorn on the stove when Ivy peeked around the corner. Can we sleep in the fort tonight? Of course, he said. Will you sleep close? I'll be right on the couch, he said, close enough to hear you breathe. She nodded and disappeared. Maya sat at the table with a mug of warm tea, hands wrapped around it. Thank you, she said quietly. Henry smiled at her. For what? For helping them find their voice. For helping me find mine again, too. He looked at her eyes, warm. We're just getting started. That night, after the house had quieted and the girls had fallen asleep in their blanket kingdom, Henry sat on the couch and looked at the dark ceiling. The judge had said something that stuck with him. Parenting requires more than presence. And for the first time in a long, long while, he felt like he was truly present, not just in the room, but in their lives. The rain started just after sunset. Slow at first, a mist against the windows, then a steady rhythm that tapped against the glass, like fingertips drumming out an anxious thought. Henry sat in the study with the lamp on low, a mug of chamomile tea in one hand, a folded newspaper in the other. He wasn't reading it, just holding it, flipping the pages slowly. His thoughts were elsewhere. Upstairs, the house was filled with soft noises. The triplets were tucked in for the night, whispering back and forth between their beds, the way they always did before sleep. Maya had stayed over in the guest room again, still recovering between treatments, her energy dipping by evening. The quiet, normally, a relief, felt stretched tonight, like the calm before a storm. At 9:17 p.m., the doorbell rang. Henry looked up sharply. No one was expected, not at this hour. He stood, slowly setting his mug down on the coaster, and crossed the foyer. The porch light flicked on automatically as he neared the door. Through the peephole, he saw a figure, tall, damp hood, pulled low against the rain. Henry opened the door partway, keeping the chain on. Malik Bell stood in the rain, soaked through his hands, tucked into the pockets of a windbreaker that wasn't doing much to keep him dry. "Can we talk?" he asked. Henry studied him carefully. His voice wasn't slurred, his stance wasn't aggressive, but there was something fragile in his posture, like he was holding himself together by threads. "Not out here," Henry said quietly, but not in front of the girls either. He closed the door, unlatched the chain, then stepped outside, pulling it shut behind him. The covered porch kept them mostly dry, the soft yellow light overhead casting Malik's face in gentle shadow. Malik looked thinner than before, paler, exhausted. "I'm not here to cause problems," he said. I needed to say something. To you." Henry crossed his arms, his face unreadable. "Go ahead. I know I don't deserve to walk back into their lives like nothing happened. I know what I did, or didn't do, and I know it's going to take more than court visits or apologies to fix that." He paused, his eyes flicking toward the window where faint laughter could be heard from upstairs. "I came to say thank you," he continued, "not for winning or for keeping them, but for being there when I wasn't. For them. For Maya." Henry was still, the rain pattering softly around them. "I want to be better," Malik said. "I really do. I've started going to meetings. Got a job interview next week at a construction firm. Nothing fancy, but it's something." Henry's face softened slightly, though he remained cautious. "Good," he said. "That's a start." Malik nodded, breathing slowly like he had more to say, but wasn't sure how to begin. "There's something else," he finally whispered. "I haven't told Maya yet, and I need to, but I thought you should hear it too." Henry's stomach tensed. "What is it?" "I have another child," Malik said. "A son. His name's Tyler. He's 8. Henry blinked. "Does Maya know?" No, Malik said. "I never told her. I wasn't there for him either. Different mom. We weren't together long. She left when Tyler was still a baby." Henry's thoughts swirled. "And you're involved in his life now?" "I wasn't. Not really. I was a mess. Jessica, his mom, kept him away from me. Said I had to get my act together first. She was right. But recently, she's let me visit. A few hours here and there. Tyler's quiet, smart. He asks about his sisters." Henry exhaled slowly, watching Malik closely. "So, what do you want from me?" "I don't know," Malik admitted. "Advice. Understanding. I guess I want to fix what I broke. Not just with Lily, Nora, and Ivy, but with Tyler too. I want to be someone they can trust. And I know I've got a long way to go." Henry looked at him. Really looked. The man who had once disappeared now stood dripping on his porch, not asking for a second chance, but a first step. I don't have all the answers, Henry said quietly. But I do know this showing up matters. Consistently. Quietly. When no one's clapping for you, you show up even when it's hard. That's how you rebuild trust. Malik nodded, emotion thick in his throat. Go home, Henry said. Get dry. Rest. If you're serious about being better, then start tomorrow, and keep going the day after that. Malik's eyes glistened. He stepped back into the rain. Thank you, he said. Henry gave a nod, then watched as Malik turned and walked down the steps, disappearing into the dark, wet night. When Henry stepped back inside, Maya was waiting in the hallway, her arms folded loosely. Was that who I think it was? She asked softly. He nodded. Yes. She waited. He just wanted to talk. Nothing happened. Maya exhaled and leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. He's trying, she whispered. I don't know if I believe it yet, but he's trying. Henry stepped closer. I told him he had to show up. Every day, whether you forgive him or not. Maya opened her eyes. That's fair. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that follows a moment too big to talk through. The next morning, the girls sat around the breakfast table with bowls of oatmeal and fruit. Ivy tapped her spoon gently against the rim. Uncle Henry, she asked. Yes, did Daddy come last night? Henry met her gaze. He did. Just to talk, nothing more. Is he okay? Nora asked, concerned. I think he's trying to be, Henry said, but he has work to do. The girls looked at each other, exchanging one of their silent conversations. Can we meet our brother someday? Lily asked. Henry blinked. You know about him. We heard Mommy talking once, Ivy said. We didn't know if it was real. Henry glanced toward Maya, who stood at the sink, listening quietly. Maya turned to the girls. Yes, he's real. His name is Tyler, and if it's something you want, we can talk to Jessica, his mom, and maybe you can meet him. The triplets nodded solemnly. Henry felt something shift in his chest. A new path opening, a widening of the family tree that had started with a sidewalk and a cardboard box. Later that afternoon, Jessica Morrison called. Henry answered quickly, stepping into the study. I just got off the phone with Malik, she said, her voice cautious. He told me about your talk. He also told me about Tyler. Henry said, I think the girls want to meet him. Jessica was silent for a moment. That might be good for him. He's always asked about his sisters. He knows they exist. He's just never met them. I'd be happy to arrange something safe. Comfortable. No pressure. I'd like that, she said. Thank you. After they hung up, Henry returned to the living room where the girls were coloring. What if Tyler comes here next weekend? He asked. Lily looked up. Really? Really? Henry smiled. That evening, as the sky turned amber and the first stars appeared, Henry stood on the porch again. Rain still clung to the railing in beads of silver. The storm had passed. Behind him, laughter rose from the living room, Maya and the girls, trying to play a board game that no one seemed to be following the rules to. And for the first time in years, Henry felt like his house didn't just have people in it. It had a future. The front porch had been swept 3 times, the pillows on the couch fluffed and rearranged at least 4. Henry wasn't typically nervous about guests. His home had entertained CEOs, senators, even a Nobel laureate once. But this was different. This wasn't a client or a politician. This was Tyler, and Tyler was just a boy. Jessica had promised they'd arrive by 10. At 9:47, the triplets were already stationed at the bay window, like sentries, their faces pressed to the glass, breath fogging the panes as they chattered in soft, rapid bursts. What if he doesn't like pancakes? Nora asked. Brows furrowed. Everyone likes pancakes, Lily said with confidence. But what if he's allergic? Ivy whispered. He won't be, Lily said again, but this time with a hint of worry. Henry sat nearby on the arm of the couch, coffee mug in hand, watching them. He's going to love them, he said gently, and he's probably just as nervous as you are. Maya was curled up on the other end of the couch, her legs tucked under her. She wore a soft green sweater today, a little color returning to her cheeks after 2 weeks of steady improvement. Her scarf matched the pale sunrise streaming in through the window. She glanced at Henry. It's strange, isn't it, preparing to welcome a part of your past into your future? He nodded. It's the kind of strange that turns into something good if you let it. At exactly 10:03, a small sedan pulled up to the curb. The triplets squealed. "He's here! He's here!" They shouted in unison, scrambling off the couch, running toward the door like puppies hearing a familiar voice. "Hold on," Henry said, laughing. "Let them get out of the car first." Through the front windows, they saw Jessica step out first, tall, serious, stylish, in a calm, no-nonsense kind of way. Then from the passenger seat came a small boy in a blue windbreaker and jeans backpack slung over one shoulder. His hair was clipped short, his movements precise. Tyler looked around as he stepped onto the curb. Then he saw the three girls waving wildly from the doorway. He didn't smile right away, but he didn't shrink back either. That was a good sign. Henry opened the front door and stepped out with Maya, greeting Jessica with a handshake and warm thanks. Tyler approached slowly, eyes darting around the porch, the yard, the steps. Then his gaze settled on the girls. "Hi," Lily said, first taking the lead as usual. "I'm Lily. This is Nora. That's Ivy. We're your sisters." Ivy added her voice, quiet but clear. Tyler didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, taking them in three identical faces, each slightly different, each holding a quiet kind of wonder. Then he nodded. "I know." A pause. "Then you all talk a lot." Lily burst out laughing. "Yeah, we know." That broke the ice. They let him inside, like royalty, showing him everything, the kitchen, the pantry full of cereal boxes, the couch fort they had built 3 nights ago and refused to take down. Tyler didn't talk much, but he listened. Closely. His eyes didn't miss a thing. When they sat down at the kitchen table for pancakes, he didn't touch his plate right away. "Are these from a box?" he asked cautiously. "No way," Ivy said, flipping her curls. "Uncle Henry makes them from scratch." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "What's scratch?" Henry chuckled. "That just means no box. Real eggs, real flour, a little buttermilk." "Want to see the recipe?" Tyler gave the faintest nod. After breakfast, they went into the backyard. The sun had come out fully now, drying the dew on the grass. The girls brought out sidewalk chalk, a worn soccer ball, and a few jump ropes. Tyler stayed near the porch at first watching. Then when Nora called out, "Wanna be on our team?" he stepped forward. And that was it. The line disappeared. He kicked the ball. He ran. He even smiled once when Ivy accidentally kicked the ball into the bird bath and soaked Lily's shoes. The girls laughed so hard they collapsed on the grass. Henry and Maya watched from the kitchen, sipping tea. "He's cautious," Maya said. Henry nodded, but curious. "He's figuring it out." Maya was quiet for a moment. "Do you think he resents the girls?" "No," Henry said. "He just hasn't had much to compare life to. He's been told bits and pieces, maybe overheard stories. But seeing them, that's real now. Jessica says he's smart, intuitive. He's got that look in his eyes," Henry agreed. "Like he's always listening more than he lets on." That afternoon, as they all gathered in the living room for cocoa and quiet crafts, Tyler sat with a pencil and a blank sheet of paper. The girls were drawing rainbows and unicorns. Tyler drew a tree. It had deep roots, a wide trunk, branches that stretched out in every direction. Henry leaned over his shoulder. "That's beautiful," he said. Tyler looked up at him, something cautious but open in his expression. "It's a family tree." Henry blinked. "Is that you in the middle?" Tyler nodded, pointing to the base of the trunk. "That's me. The roots are Mommy. The branches are everything else." "And those 3? Henry asked, pointing at a small cluster of matching leaves. "My sisters," Tyler said simply. "And this one?" Henry tapped another small leaf, just above the girls. Tyler hesitated. "You." Henry's throat tightened. "Why am I on a branch? Because you showed up." That night, as the girls camped out in the living room again, insisting Tyler join their pillow fort sleepover, Jessica sat with Henry and Maya at the kitchen table. "He hasn't had a lot of steady men in his life," Jessica said quietly. "But he asked me yesterday if Mr. Langston was the kind of grown-up that stays. I didn't know how to answer that, but now I think I do." Henry sat back, his face calm. "You can tell him yes." "I will," Jessica said. Before bedtime, the triplets gathered around Maya, snuggling close, voices sleepy. He's okay, Ivy whispered. Tyler. He's quiet, but he's nice. I like his drawing, Nora added. He can sleep in our room next time, Lily said. We have space. Maya kissed each of them, her smile soft and steady. I think he'd like that. Henry passed the doorway as the girls drifted off, watching them curl beside their new brother, like vines growing toward sunlight, slow but certain. Outside, the stars blinked into view. Another piece of the story had clicked into place. The family was growing gently, unexpectedly, but stronger by the day. Sunday morning crept in quietly. Pale gold sunlight spilled across the wooden floors, dancing between cracks in the curtains. The house for once was still. Tyler had stayed the night. He slept between Ivy and Nora in their room, his arms tucked tightly against his sides, unsure of what was allowed. But sometime around 3 a.m., according to Lily, he had turned toward the wall and murmured in his sleep, "Don't go." By morning, the girls had already claimed him. Tyler doesn't like oatmeal with raisins, Lily announced at breakfast, passing on the newly discovered fact like it was classified intelligence. He likes scrambled eggs, but not the runny kind, added Nora. He folds his socks, Ivy chimed in, genuinely impressed. Henry, pouring juice into small cups, couldn't help but smile. Maya sat at the table, resting her chin in her hand, watching the four of them like she was seeing the ending to a story she never thought would be written. But by noon, the stillness of the morning had begun to shift. Henry had left briefly to pick up Maya's prescription refill, and Jessica had called to say she was delayed picking up Tyler until late afternoon. That gave the kids more time together and more freedom than usual, which is how, without meaning to, they found it. They were in Henry's study, the no-mess zone, as he called it. He usually kept the door closed, but today he'd left it cracked open just enough for 4 curious heads to squeeze inside. It smells like grown-up books, Nora said, scrunching her nose. Don't touch anything, Tyler warned. We're just looking. But 5 minutes later, Ivy spotted a faded wooden box on the bottom shelf of a cabinet. It had no lock, just a small silver clasp. What's that? Lily asked. A treasure box, Ivy whispered. Nora looked back toward the hallway. Should we? It's not locked, Lily pointed out. That means it's okay, right? So Ivy opened it. Inside were photographs, yellowing letters, and a few torn Polaroids. At the very top of the pile was an envelope with the name Charlotte, written in careful slanted handwriting. Tyler was the one who picked it up. Who's Charlotte? He asked. I don't know, Ivy said. Maybe a grown-up friend. Lily took the letter and unfolded it. As soon as she started reading aloud, all 4 of them froze. Dear Dad, I'm not mad anymore. I used to be, when you forgot my piano recital, and when you started calling less. But now I think you were just sad. I wish I'd told you I understood before I left. I wish I'd said goodbye properly. I miss you. Love, Charlotte. The room was silent. Lily's voice had faltered halfway through. Nora stared at the letter like it had turned to ice in her hands. Tyler looked at the photograph that had fallen out with it. A teenage girl, brown eyes, long hair, standing in front of a grand piano. He didn't speak. He just looked toward the hallway, and there stood Henry. He had returned quietly, the paper bag of medicine still in his hand. The door had creaked when he stepped inside, and now the 4 children turned toward him, wide-eyed and motionless. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Henry stepped into the study and gently took the letter from Lily's hand. Her name was Charlotte, he said softly. She was my daughter. Maya appeared behind him a second later, having heard the silence turn heavy. She took one look at the letter and exhaled quietly. She passed away, Nora asked, her voice tiny. No, Henry said, his voice steady. She's alive, I think. But I haven't seen her in many years. Why, Ivy whispered. Henry sat down in the old armchair beside the bookshelf, the letter still in his hand. When Charlotte was your age, he began, I worked all the time. I thought if I gave her everything she needed, clothes, food, a nice house, that was enough. But I was gone too much, missed too many dinners, too many stories. I stopped showing up. He looked at Tyler. It's not that I didn't love her. I just didn't know how to be there through the sadness. Like Daddy, Lily said before she could stop herself. Henry nodded slowly. A little yes. I think I failed in ways I didn't see until it was too late. Did she stop loving you? Ivy asked. No, Henry said gently, but she stopped waiting. One day she packed a bag and went to live with her aunt in Oregon. I haven't seen her since. The children were quiet again, their hearts heavy with a story they hadn't meant to uncover. I'm sorry we opened it, Tyler said, ashamed. Henry shook his head. No. It's okay. Maybe it's time I stopped keeping it hidden. Maya stepped forward and put her hand on his shoulder. They're strong enough to carry parts of our stories, Henry, and maybe it helps them understand theirs. Later that afternoon, Jessica arrived, her umbrella shaking off droplets at the door. Tyler hugged his sisters goodbye, less shy now, more confident. He looked Henry in the eye and said, "Thank you for letting me see her room." Anytime, Henry replied, hand on his shoulder. "You're always welcome here." As the car pulled away, the girls stood at the window again, arms wrapped around each other. "I think Tyler will come back," Nora said. "I think so too," Lily whispered. That night, Henry sat at his desk in the study, the wooden box open beside him. The letter from Charlotte sat in front of him, edges worn soft by time. Then slowly, he reached for a pen. "Dear Charlotte, I don't know if this letter will reach you. I don't even know if you want to hear from me. But today 4 children found your words, and they asked me questions I should have answered a long time ago. I failed you. I see that now. But I want you to know something. I've started showing up for 3 little girls, for their mother, for a boy who's learning to trust. And maybe there's still time to make things right. Love, Dad." He folded the letter slowly, placed it in a fresh envelope, and sealed it. Maya appeared in the doorway. "You wrote to her?" He nodded. "Think you'll send it? I think I need to," he said, "even if she never writes back." They stood there together for a moment, watching the envelope rest atop the old box, like a stone laid gently on a grave. But it wasn't a goodbye. It was a beginning. The house, now filled with the soft breathing of sleeping children, felt different somehow. Not just lived in, but alive. And for the first time in years, Henry Langston felt whole. The house was unusually quiet for a Saturday morning, not in a tense or eerie way, but in the kind of peaceful hush that only comes after a storm has passed. The kind of silence that hums with calm instead of chaos. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the living room, catching specks of dust in the air like fireflies. The triplets were curled up on the carpet, each holding a different book, their feet occasionally bumping into one another, but not bothering to complain. Ivy was reading aloud to a stuffed bear named Mr. Marzipan, and Nora kept flipping backward through her book, pretending to be an expert, even though it was upside down. Tyler sat by the window, carefully organizing a handful of crayons by color, tip size, and sharpness. It was the most Tyler thing he could do, and the girls had learned not to interrupt the process unless they had something truly urgent, like a cookie emergency or an incoming tickle attack. In the kitchen, the smell of cinnamon and browned butter curled through the air. Henry was making French toast, humming something quiet under his breath. Maya sat nearby, sipping tea. She had color in her cheeks again, and energy in her bones. Her next treatment was still a week away, but for now she looked strong. Not perfect, not entirely pain-free, but upright, laughing again and stubborn as ever. It was in every quiet and ordinary way a good day. And for Henry Langston, it felt like a miracle. "Girls," he called out, flipping another piece of toast in the pan. "You ready for breakfast, or should I just serve it to the neighbors?" 3 heads popped up from behind the couch. "We're ready," they chorused, already scrambling to the table. "Tyler, you too, bud. I'm coming," he said carefully, returning each crayon to its correct slot in the case before standing. Maya laughed. "I've never met a kid who organizes crayons like library books. He says chaos is loud," Henry said with a grin. "So he builds quiet things." They all gathered around the table, and for a few minutes the only sounds were forks on plates and syrupy giggles. Uncle Henry Ivy said, mouth full of toast, "Are you rich?" The question came out of nowhere, as most questions from 6-year-olds tend to do. Henry blinked. Maya raised an eyebrow and reached for a napkin to dab Ivy's chin. Yes," Henry replied, not entirely sure where this was headed. "I guess I am." "Do rich people always make pancakes for kids and help mommies get better?" "No, honey," Maya said gently. "Most don't." "But he does," Lily said. "So he's like, special rich." "I like that," Maya said, smiling into her tea. "Special rich." Henry cleared his throat, pretending to be flustered. I just like pancakes. Do you think Charlotte likes pancakes? Nora asked suddenly. The room went still. Henry put his fork down. I don't know, he said after a moment. She used to. With strawberries. Did you send the letter? Ivy asked. Henry looked up a little surprised. Yes, he said. 2 days ago. Did she write back? Not yet. They were quiet again. Not sad, just thoughtful, like kids trying to understand that not every answer comes quickly. Later that afternoon, while the kids were in the yard, racing paper airplanes, Maya sat with Henry on the porch swing. The wind was soft, brushing the edge of her scarf against her cheek. Henry held a glass of iced tea. Neither of them said anything for a while. Then Maya spoke. This house. It feels like it was waiting for them. Henry looked toward the garden where Ivy was laughing so hard she fell over sideways into the grass. It was waiting for someone, he said. I just didn't know who. Maya reached into her cardigan and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The hospital called. My scan came back. Henry turned toward her suddenly still. I'm not out of the woods, she said, but the treatment's working. They said, cautiously optimistic. I'll take that. Henry reached for her hand. That's more than enough. She smiled. And I can start doing more again. For them. For myself. He nodded. You never stopped. That evening, as dusk turned the sky, lavender and the cicadas began their nightly chorus, Henry lit a small fire in the backyard pit. The children gathered around with marshmallows and tiny skewers, each competing to make the perfect golden brown without catching it on fire. Tyler wins, Lily declared, examining his carefully toasted marshmallow with both admiration and mild suspicion. You're like a marshmallow ninja. He didn't say anything, but he smiled a full, unguarded smile that made Maya catch her breath. As they ate and laughed, Henry slipped away for a moment to the mailbox. There was only one envelope inside, no return address. But the handwriting? His hand trembled slightly as he turned it over. Inside was a single piece of stationery. Dad, I got your letter. I don't know what I'm ready for yet, but I read it. Twice. I'm glad you're showing up for someone. Maybe someday we'll talk. Charlotte. Henry stood still under the porch light, eyes wet, letter shaking in his hands. He folded it slowly, carefully, slipped it into his coat pocket, then turned and walked back into the light of the fire, where the kids were now roasting marshmallows for Maya too, insisting hers had to be even better because she was the queen of the day. What took you so long? Maya asked as he sat back down. He didn't answer right away, just looked around at the faces glowing in firelight, full of joy and mischief and love. I was just checking the sky, he said softly. It looks like a clear night. Later, when the fire was just embers and the kids were tucked into bed, Tyler now with a permanent sleeping bag spot beside the girls, Henry sat in the quiet house with Maya once more. Do you think she'll come? Maya asked, her voice gentle. I don't know, Henry replied. But she heard you, Maya said. He nodded. That's enough, for now. The clock ticked softly in the background. The air was warm. The lights were low. Outside, 4 sleeping children dreamed under one roof, of forests and tree houses of crayons and letters of pancakes and porch swings and the sound of someone always showing up. And for once, nothing needed fixing, nothing needed explaining. It was just a good day, the kind where everything held, the kind where nothing broke. Spring came early that year. The garden behind Henry's house bloomed with wildflowers the girls had planted from tiny seed packets, daisies, marigolds, forget-me-nots. Tyler had his own row now where he carefully tended tomatoes and carrots, his fingers finally comfortable in the dirt. One Saturday afternoon, Maya sat in the sun with a light scarf wrapped loosely around her shoulders. Her cheeks were fuller. Her laugh came easier. Henry watched from the porch, a lemonade glass in hand, as all 4 children chased a paper kite across the yard, their voices rising like birdsong. They had no idea how much they'd healed him. Jessica sat beside Maya, chatting easily. Malik stood by the fence, helping Ivy reel the kite back down, his visits now routine, steady, respectful, growing into something close to dependable. Everything felt different now, not perfect, just real. Inside the house, on the hallway wall, hung a new photo, one the girls insisted on framing. It showed the 5 of them, Lily Nora, Ivy Tyler, and Henry, all squished together on the porch steps, laughing so hard no one was looking at the camera. It was joy, captured mid-motion. One quiet evening, as stars flickered above and the kids drifted off to sleep, Maya turned to Henry. "Do you think Charlotte would have liked them?" she asked softly. Henry looked up at the night sky, smiling gently. "I think she would have loved them," he said. "And maybe, just maybe, when she was ready, she'd come home to see for herself. Because this home wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to every child who needed someone to stay. And Henry, at long last, had learned how to stay." Thank you for watching this heartfelt story of healing family and second chances. If this journey moved you, please comment your favorite moment and subscribe for more stories that touch the soul and remind us what truly matters. We'd love to hear how this story made you feel. Your words mean more than you know. And if you're ready for another emotional journey, check out our next video. It might just change the way you see the world. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. See you in the next one.